I apologize for that. I wasn't quite aware of what all was going on. We make it up as we go. We call ourselves the Gumby Church because we're really flexible. What an interesting scene that we saw up here as the children. You know, Emmanuel, as of course, covers ancient history, current, and there's huge implications for the future. And we saw those children up here that are also, what an indication of the future, where this is all going. Most of us are very familiar with this word Emmanuel, and of course this has been rehearsed in song by the children and by Joshua Aaron. But there's actually a massive connection with this holy season and way beyond. So I'd like to walk through this. I really don't know how we're doing for time. It looks like we're 20 after 2. I know that we've got some constraints here. So normally I'm very happy with any and all questions and comments, but for brevity's sake, allow me to go through this, and if we have time, we'll discuss it afterwards and or out at the gardens if you like. But normally I'm very happy to discuss things on the fly, but we have a fairly tight schedule, so that's going to have to be the way it is. Isaiah 7:14, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Whoa, that's quite a statement. This isn't a prophet giving you a sign, giving you something of significance, but here's Yahweh giving you a particular sign, and it's an unusual one. This is not something the average prophet would give. A virgin will conceive, that's not possible, and bear a son. What an intriguing way to introduce this whole event with something supernatural with a child. And he will name him Emmanuel, whether you spell that with an I or with an E. But it's interesting, you shall call his name. Some of you are aware of this word. In English, we know what the word name means. It's spelling, it's pronunciation. A lot of times it has to do with your family name. But the Hebrew word here is Shem, sometimes pronounced shame, and it means much more than just audible diction consonants. It's the reputation. It's the fame, the glory, the memorial, what you know them for, their bio, their passion, their mission. We're going to get new ones. We're getting new ones of these. But this title that was given carried a lot of significance. It wasn't just an unusual sounding Hebrew name. So the word Emmanuel, as we all know, we've heard and sung this so often, but there's a little bit more punch to it when you look at it in the Hebrew. It means the mighty God. Not just any God, but the mighty God is inferred by the Hebrew word. And he's with us or beside us, like that. I really like that. It's really wonderful to remember that that isn't just history, that's now, and it's not changing. Isaiah 11, verses 1 and 2, a shoot will spring from the stock of Jesse, David's dad. A new shoot will grow from his roots, and on him will rest the Spirit of Yahweh, the Spirit of wisdom, insight, counsel, power, knowledge, and a deep, abiding respect for Yahweh. When you think about qualifications that we would all earnestly want, the wisdom, the insight, the counsel, the power, the spirit of knowledge, what's this going to be used for? Why would this one be equipped with this? To deal with us. It's to deal with us. It's to deal with human beings. The wisdom in dealing with us, the insight, the counsel, the power, the spirit, the knowledge. And of course, to be fully equipped with this, he had to be in our shoes. Verses 3 and 4. His inspiration will lie in fearing a deep abiding respect of Yahweh, and his judgment will not be by appearances. This is going to keep coming up, this judgment and judging. In our mainstream Christian world, judging usually means both thumbs down, condemnation. That's not what this word means here in the Hebrew or in the Greek. The assessment will be a thorough and an accurate one. But the assessment is being done for the purpose not of punishment, but for redemption. It's huge. The whole context here is redemption, not destruction. His verdict is not on hearsay. It's going to be very precise. You know, the creators of the heavens and the earth created our minds to record absolutely everything. Why? Unless it was to rewind and take a look and fully assess us to find out what has made us tick. How did we get here? Why do we have these strengths, these weaknesses, these sensitivities? It'll be an open book. The author of our salvation knows this very well. He will judge or assess the weak. I believe any one of us could have the picture here for the weak, right? How many of us really consider that we're strong? If we do, we probably got some sanity issues. Really not assessing ourselves very well. This is us. He's going to judge or assess the weak. What for? To strengthen, to heal, to nurture. And he's going to evaluate with integrity, accuracy, and give a fair sentence for the humblest in the land. This is all part of that redemption thing that's going on with Emmanuel. Isaiah 49, 1 and 2, coasts and islands, listen to me. Pay attention, distant peoples. Yahweh called me when I was in the womb. Before my birth, he had pronounced or defined my name, what I was going to be accomplishing, what I was going to be heralding, what I was going to be championing. He made my mouth like a sharp sword to cut through and also to defend. He hid me in the shadow of his hand. And he says, how can I forget you with these wounds in my hand? He made me into the sharpened arrow and concealed me in his quiver. Figures of speech, but protective. Verse 5, and now Yahweh has spoken, who formed me in the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob or Yaakov back to him, reunite Israel to him. I shall be honored in Yahweh's eyes, and my Elohim has been my strength. These prophetic words that Isaiah was intended to writing down is very clearly about the Messiah. And very clearly about what his role is going to be with his children. He said, it's not enough for you to be my servant, to restore the tribes, bring back the survivors of Israel, but I'll make you a light to the nations. Isn't this interesting? That got passed to us. You are the light of the world. And we probably want to argue and say, you got to be kidding me. I'm not glowing like the little lamps the kids held here. He says, yeah, you're the light of the world. At least that's where you're going to be. I will make you the light of the nations so that my salvation, Hebrew word here is Yeshua, may reach the remotest parts of the earth. And I thought, how interesting that the structure of that sentence would be exactly that. Isaiah 53. Who has believed our report? We have a world that is largely blind and deaf. Not many believers, but you're exceptions to that. And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? He shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of dry ground, indicating a vulnerability, small, delicate, like a child, initially. It's interesting that with a mother and child, predictably, some of the best counterfeits Satan's ever pulled off are the ones he pulled off before the real thing happened. Think about that. What does that tell you about what Satan understands about the plan of salvation? He pretty much knows in general terms what's going on. And of course, he wants to scuttle this. So he's counterfeiting it before the real thing happens. These happened in ancient civilizations long before a Miriam was engaged to a Joseph, long before. And we've got the mother-child scenario going on here. Counterfeits. Coming up to the time of Miriam or Mary and Joseph, it's really interesting when you look at the account of all of the date and time anchors that are put into the sentences. It was in the days of Herod, so this locks in a certain time frame, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias. By definition, any of the priests have to be not only of the tribe of Levi, but of the descendants of Aaron. And of course, you see his wife was too. This would make their son a priest. It may have very well been the obvious high priest when the time came. Just to throw in a little thought here, the word Zacharias means remembered of God, really appropriate. And Elisheva or Elizabeth means my God has sworn. Also really intriguing. But think about this. Elizabeth's cousin's name was Mary or Miriam. So here you've got Elizabeth not only being a Levite, but of the descendant of Aaron. And you think she had just a regular old Jewish girl for a relative? Don't think so. They had to go to great length to preserve that Aaronic line, those descendants of Aaron. And the likelihood of having a mixture of relatives of any other tribe was not great at all. Just something to think about. Think about how well this works. His stepfather was of the kingly line of David, and his mother was of the priestly line of Aaron. Works real well, doesn't it? So we know that Zechariah was in the priesthood, and there are some pieces that we can presume about them. There is some information given, but it's presumed that the priestly temple responsibilities for the year were divided into 24. This is one of the theories. So you got 15 days, 24 times 15 is 360. So you've got roughly a year. This is a theory. And it's reasonable, but I don't claim it to be absolute, but it's reasonable. It's also presumed that the first course or group began in Abib, the first month of the Hebrew year, which usually falls in March or April. It's said that he was of the course of Abiah, and that's defined as being the eighth one. So it's the eighth group of guys that came in to serve at the temple. So it would end and or around the fourth month then. Got 15 day, 8 times 15 is 120, 30-day months. You've got roughly the fourth month of the Hebrew year, which would fall in our June or July issues. Because of course their months were all about moon. That's where we get our month from, the word month. So new moon, full moon, no moon. And whereas June and July, of course, is a Roman calendar and things vary. So June, July-ish. Luke 1:23, more interesting pieces here. And it came to pass that as soon as the days of his duties were fulfilled, locked in, and he went back home. So he went back home June or July. And after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months. All these details getting dropped here. Boom. So you got June, July plus 5 months. You're going to push this into November and December in our time. I just find this really interesting that you can tell that our months used to sync with the Hebrew months. September, you can tell by the name, was the 7th month at one time. October was the 8th month. November was the 9th. December was the 10th originally. And of course, things got tweaked. The Romans made some alterations, added some things. So here we've got this event happening. 5 months, November, December. Now in the 6th month, we got another locker here. 6th month, presumably, of Elizabeth's pregnancy. So we're looking at December, January. The angel Gabriel was sent from God unto the city of Galilee. We would probably refer to that as a heavy hitter. Gabriel is a very significant being, conveying some very important eternity-changing information. And he went to the town of Nazareth, you see the map up there, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, or Yosef, meaning Yahweh has added. Of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary, or Miriam, meaning their rebellion. Luke 3 has got a very different looking genealogy than the one in Matthew. And some people feel that may very well be Miriam or Mary's genealogy. Just a thought, not conclusive. So we can do some real simple math here. She went to visit in this month, and 9 months later, going to push you right into September or October for his birth. Very easily defendable. When you consider the annual holy days all punctuate eternity-changing events that the Messiah are involved in, you can predict this is happening at an appointed time, not just a generic, oops, maybe sometime in the fall, or maybe sometime whenever. It appears to be very intentionally put there. The angel came near her. That's a significant event there. Was he radiating and glowing, and what did he look like? Many times when the angelic realm make an appearance, it indicates that sometimes it's described as they're being clothed in white, but it actually indicates that it's just glowing, radiating. And he said, greatly rejoice, for you're going to be honored with blessings. This HP up at the top there, that means that's a Hal paraphrase, just so you know. It's close. I took some liberties, but I don't think I abused anything. Greatly rejoice, for you're going to be honored with blessings. The Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women. She was shaken when she heard this and wondered, what is this greeting and blessing meant coming from this being? And the angel said to her, "Don't be afraid, Mary, for you're going to receive a kindness from God. This isn't going to be a curse. You're not being punished." Weigh these words, ladies, and imagine these words being spoken to you. You will conceive in your womb and give birth to a son, and you will call him, not an unusual name at that time, but you're going to call him Yeshua. Yahweh is salvation. That in itself probably wasn't real shocking, because that wasn't an unusual name. But what he said after that becomes rather shocking. He shall be great. The Greek word is megas. We use this term mega, meaning mighty in strength and importance. And shall be called, say what? The Son of the Most High. My baby, my boy is going to be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God shall give unto him the throne of his father, his ancestor David. The word David means beloved, beloved. And he shall be king over the house of Jacob perpetually, and his reign shall not end. That's pretty tight sentence structure right there. Not ending. Can you imagine these words being spoken to you? Fathers or mothers, of something of that kind of gravity being laid on you. Now it's interesting, her reaction. Then Mary asked the angel, how can that happen? We're just engaged and we have not been active. We haven't had intercourse. How can that happen? That it didn't work. It didn't make sense to him, her. The angel answered, said, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power and the ability of the Most High will envelop you. Therefore, the Holy One, which will be engendered in you, will be called the Son of God." Now, it's interesting where Mary's thought immediately went. Because if she was pregnant out of wedlock, what are the consequences for that? Death. There's stoning, potentially stoning for this scenario. Who would believe if she explained this to someone? No, it wasn't just Joseph and I getting premarital. Yeah, it was the Holy Spirit that impregnated me. It's beyond human belief. Going from that scenario, giving more time frame. At that time, Caesar Augustus determined that a census of persons, property, and income was to be taken. And like it says in parentheses there, it makes sense. This would be the fall. It's going to be done after the fall harvest and when the people would gather at or around for the holy days. Be a logical time to do this. Joseph and Mary, his espoused wife, well, she's clearly about ready to deliver here, and she's still an espoused wife. So you hear later, though, the festive wedding, right? And her parents and his parents and the joy and the fest, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. about any joyous wedding or celebration or embracing by her family and his, is I think they were shoved out of the family because it looked to them like there was premarital activity. Still an espoused wife. She was great with child, went from Galilee to Bethlehem, where she went into labor and delivered her firstborn son. Whether she was riding in a donkey, walking, ladies, you know what that's like. Days before, weeks before your delivery. But she went. You would think she could say, hey, Joseph, you just go ahead and take care of this. I'm going to stay home. But she didn't. She went. Wrapped him in cloth. Seems to be some special connection here with the swaddling or the wrapping. Laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. And you think, Joseph, didn't you do any planning ahead? Maybe not. We don't know how this all came to be, or did he plan ahead? And the word was, hey, look, these guys are pregnant out of wedlock. We're not going to have that kind in our hotel. We're not going to have that kind in our facility. They're just not welcome. I don't know. Seems curious. So that night, as the kids have been studying, in the fields in that area, shepherds are watching over their flock, which is normal, right? They have no fences. They have very good dogs, and they've got to stay alert day and night. So if you're watching over your flock, you're going to be probably in a higher location so you can see what's going on. If this in fact happened, like I think it did on the first night of the Feast of Tabernacles, you're going to have a full moon. We don't know about cloud cover that night. May have been beautiful, may have been bright and clear, but they were watching. They're predators, there's no question. So they're alert, they're watching. And then suddenly, boom, you got this angel standing next to him. Why? You didn't see him approaching from anywhere up above or either side, just suddenly there. He stood by them, right beside them. Boom. And the splendor and brightness of the Lord flooded the area with light. Was that a kind of a spotlight like what we do on the stage? A 3-foot spotlight and we jump into the spotlight? Or was this 30-foot spotlight? Or was this a 300-foot spotlight? Or was this a 3-acre spotlight? Or was this a 3-mile spotlight? We don't know how big this was. We know what it's like to flip lights on. They don't. They had oil lamps. They had fires. Who else saw this happening? We live in the country. At night, it gets very dark. There are no street lights where we live. Very few of the farmers in our area have the dusk to dawn light, so it gets very, very dark. And that's what they're used to. Very, very dark. Moonlight, starlight, depending on how clear the skies are, and suddenly this light. And they were terrified. Really no surprise. Interesting punctuation, who's called the light of the world. Angel said, don't be afraid. It might have been a little late. There might have been an incontinence problem right there with what just happened. I mean, it was shocking. We don't know about sound effects here. I'm bringing you excellent, joyous news for you and all mankind. The Savior, the Yeshua, has just been born in the city of David. The anointed Savior. So we just upped this massively. They knew what this meant. This isn't just some revolutionary. As a sign, you will be led to an infant, And we're presuming this is a supernatural event being led, wrapped in cloth, lying in a manger. And we're not done yet. See the special effects there? Okay. So this was shocking enough. And then suddenly the angel was joined by a vast angelic choir. Vast. It talks about the host. In the King James, it talks about a host, which could be translated army, or it's large number, but they were praising. So I took the liberty of putting down choir. And can we imagine what this sounded like? And you could ask yourself, who else heard this? Who else saw the light? Who else heard this sound? And can you imagine if you had heard these words spoken to you, heard these things, would it be possible for anyone to shut you up for the rest of the days of your life? Absolutely not. You would be rehearsing what you've just seen and what you've just heard. There would be no putting a lid on this. And they went far and they went wide. Honor and glory to the Most High God. This will lead to the tranquility on earth. Hasn't gotten here yet, has it? Absolutely has not gotten here yet. And it's going to lead to a benevolence amongst men. It's where it's going. It's where it's going. This day is about when it's going to go there. Once the angels left, the shepherds said in unison, "Whoa! Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's go and see what the Lord has told us." And they left quickly. I'll bet they did. And they found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger. Can mean a stall, could in fact be a sukkah. Do you remember when the Israelites left Egypt, one of their first stopping points was called Sukkot, because they built primitive dwellings for their animals. Depending on what kind of animals, a lot of animals do just fine with primitive shelters year-round. But it's interesting that they built that, but this may very well have been, ironically, a sukkah, the thing that represents the Messiah, the branch that covers us, the being that came into a primitive dwelling to make it possible for us to have permanent dwellings. Yeshua was born in Bethlehem, which means house of bread, of Judea, when Herod was king. We're locking in some more times here. Wise men from the east. I know when I was in grade school, we called them the three wise guys. And we had the song, "We three kings of Orient are riding on a loaded cigar. It exploded, they reloaded." Doesn't say three guys there. Doesn't say three eccentric guys on camels. They did give three things, but it's common that there were just three of them. And as we read through this, you see, this just doesn't make a lot of sense. So these wise men from the east of Israel, is primarily where the 10 tribes went. The likelihood of them knowing these prophecies, the faithful remnant knowing those prophecies, knowing the time and the supernatural events going on in the heavens to let them know this is on, also made a public appearance in Jerusalem. Some have estimated that this group of very powerful men, they're not only magos or magi, they're very powerful militarily or governmentally, may have had a contingent of 800 to 1,000 going with them. This would then make sense why Herod and all of Jerusalem were kind of rattled with what was going on here. It's also interesting that some have speculated that there was a time that these nations had conquered that area not that many years before, but allowed the obedience and the worship and the use of the temple and the maintaining of the priesthood. So it felt like this might be happening again. You got a large entourage of military escort. Now, it's predictable that if you're going to be carrying valuables, you're going to want an escort. That's kind of a foreign concept to us. But we know the story of the Good Samaritan, where you've got bushwhackers. We have seen a supernatural heavenly signs and came to honor and worship the one that's destined to be the commanding king of the Jews. This would rattle a current sitting king, wouldn't it? There were things said there that really rattled them, the whole city. So Herod cracked heads here and he says, hey, guys, chief priests, scribes, where is this happening? Isn't it intriguing? They knew. They full well knew where Bethlehem was and the role it would play. They put their finger on it right away. They continued, the Magi, the wise, this contingent, continued their journey, and once again, the star. We know stars can be symbolic of angels. I'm assuming this is some type of a guiding light. And when they saw it in the same star that they saw in the east, they were able to identify that this is the same. This doesn't make sense if you got something that is thousands and thousands of miles in the sky, and you're using that to figure your trajectory to a location. You can tell north, south, east, west, but to locate a precise piece on the face of the earth off of stars and or formations, there's something supernatural going on here. And you think about this, the amount of supernatural events leading up to this, the punctuation that's being given to this event, prophecies, heavenly signs, large groups of people coming. They saw the young child. Oh, they came into a house. We've been given clues here that they obviously didn't come to the primitive shelter, whatever that was. We know by reading elsewhere that Herod killed up to 2-year-olds, so this is around 2 years after the birth. I love to look at the nativity scenes with the kids drawing them. That's always interesting. There was one in the nativity scene where they had the Mary, Joseph, and the animals and the baby, and they had what looked to be a laundry line in the back with socks on it. So I was just curious, so what have you got here? It's a nativity scene. So well, that's Mary, and that's Joseph, and it's the baby, and well, what is that there in the laundry line? Like, well, that's why the shepherds wash their socks by night. And also in the corner was kind of this rotund man, and they said, well, who's that? So that's Round John Virgin. Okay, we're going to keep moving here. So it's interesting, they presented to them gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. All three of these very, very valuable. How much did they give? Going to give you a little coin? A small cache of. There are people that feel that what might have happened here is they may have bestowed on them enough wealth, because if in fact they're going to be discriminated against. Yeah, Joseph, you can do carpentry, you can do construction, but it ain't happening here. Their neighborhood, it looks like they were pushed out. They may have been given enough wealth to, of course, shortly after this, they went to Egypt. That's not done free. And there may have been discrimination for years here. So it's a theory that they may have been given that kind of wealth to carry them quite a while. Deuteronomy 16:16 is many times referred to this time of the year. 3 times in the year shall all of your males appear before me, and don't do it empty. So this was, if in fact this was during this feast, it would have been appropriate, very appropriate, to come before them with an offering, because they knew who this was. You don't worship a civil king. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder. What a curious thing to start with a child that's just born and being given to us. And the government, the dominion, the power will be upon him. And his name, same word again, this reputation, fame, glory, vision, passion, mission. And his name will be called, or what he's going to be known for is going to be wonderful. He is going to be surpassing extraordinary. Superlatives, big capital bold letters, superlatives. He's going to be a counselor. And you think about when you get really good counsel, you've got it from people that have been there, done that, and gotten beat up, gotten hurt, been through it, and he has been through it. So he's a phenomenal counselor. He's the ideal, he's the ultimate. A title, these are descriptions of titles that he had. The mighty God. Did the Messiah support the role and the position of the Most High? Absolutely. Was he, in fact, the prevailing one, the valiant one, the champion? All of those things. Whether this is describing himself or the Most High God, either one works. The everlasting Father, and there's discussion on this. This can be translated that he is a perpetuation of the Father. That works. That works very well. It's confusing to me when you refer to both the Son as the Father and the Father as the Son. I think that's getting into some of the Trinity confusion, but that's a big topic, and for what this is worth. This can mean this. He's going to be called the Prince of Peace. We know what prince means, and the word for peace is that phenomenal word, shalom. Tranquility, health, prosperity, wholeness, soundness, friendship. It's a wonderful, rich word. So when you say shalom to somebody, you're not just expressing a nice thing to say. It's a very, very rich expression that has excellent layers of tranquility, not just peace, but tranquil. Health in mind, health in body. Prosperity, where you're truly prospering in your knowledge, in your growth, in your life. That there's going to be a wholeness, and you think about how many of us are broken or had parts torn away. Soundness versus frailness and broken. And it's interesting, the last of the words there is friendship. You know, I haven't called you servants anymore. I'm going to call you friends. 9:7. Of the increase of his government and peace there shall be no end. Wow. What's being said here? When I first read this, I began thinking about it. So does this indicate that we're going to have big government where you got more and more intrusive control? Kind of like what's been going on literally in this country. But when you take a look at the Hebrew, the word for increase indicates great abundance. And it's not modifying the government. It's modifying what will happen because of the government. Quite different. The government here can mean power or dominion. So you're going to have this great prosperity. You're going to have this great success or increase or abundance because of the power and dominion. And peace. Again, that wonderful word shalom, tranquility, health, prosperity, completeness, soundness, safety, health, and friendship. So there's going to be a great abundance of that, and there will be no end. That's that sideways 8, right? Infinity and beyond. So again, this is a Hal paraphrase. I've kind of rewritten this. His dominion will bring an endless abundance of tranquility, prosperity, completeness, safety, health, and friendship. Wow, that's some phenomenal. That's a phenomenal statement. And it's not just a statement, it's reality. That's what happens. That's where this is all going. Upon the throne of David, and again that word David means the beloved, and upon his kingdom to order it and to establish it with judgment and justice. They're directly related, aren't they? Judgment, justice, they're directly related. And it's interesting, he's going to do it with properly evaluating, properly assessing, effectively helping, wonderfully redeeming. Isaiah 9:7, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. So the zeal has to do with passion. And again, this Lord of hosts, you've got this powerful inference here with the words that are used. The eternal captain of the heavenly armies will thoroughly accomplish this. Remember when Joshua just crossed the Jordan? And who did he see with a drawn sword? Same title here. The captain of the eternal armies, the eternal or heavenly armies. Just to kind of let him know, we got you covered here. Still do. They still have us covered. But the passion, the vision, and that's what his name indicates. So how is this going to happen? This judgment and justice, and there's going to be a redemption, a restoring, and a renewing, and Emmanuel came for a purpose. I think a huge step of that happens right here, where the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, the voice of the archangel and the trump of God. Both the shout and the blast of the trumpet comes from the word teruah. We just celebrated Yom Teruah. And that's got to be a huge part of what we're celebrating. The shouting of joy, shouting of victory, and the trump of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Because they're about to be drafted into work. Drafted into this job of redemption. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with those in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. We would call this the resurrection of the elect or the firstborn. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. And these words comfort one another, remind one another. This is where this is going. Regardless of what's happening now, this is where this is going. These are permanent results. What we're dealing with right now are not. This will last. Revelation 20 and verse 4 ties into this whole concept of the resurrection. And I saw thrones and those that sat upon them, and judgment was given to them. For what purpose? What purpose will the first fruits be given judgment for? Redemption. To assess, to heal, to nurture. We've got that beautiful expression, if the Messiah makes you free, you will be free indeed. And the ones that the Messiah has equipped to give judgment to can also liberate. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. Very different than what most religions consider. This happened at the return of the Messiah, not at death. But they're going to reign with him 1,000 years. Another verse in 20 and verse 6 that ties into this, blessed and holy is he that has part in the first resurrection. There's a distinction here, so there must be a second. On such, the second death has no power. They're saying pretty clearly, they're not dying. There won't be a second death. There is a second life, but there won't be a second death, i.e., eternal, i.e., perpetual. And they will be priests. What do priests do? Supposed to be assisting in our relationship with the Father and the Son, and obedience, teaching, guiding, encouraging, judging, assessing. They shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Repeats it just a couple verses down. So there is this time looking yet in the future. A lot of people associate this whole season with that 1,000-year period. That 1,000-year period is a joyous time, a very significant time, but it's kind of a bus stop when you consider where we're all going. When the 1,000 years are expired, Satan will be loosed out of his prison and will go out and deceive the nations. I didn't include all of the gory details, you know them. But he's getting released again after the 1,000 years. And here's something else that happens. And the rest of the dead, rest of what dead? Well, we just got talking done about those that were raised in the first resurrection. Obedient, called, chosen, faithful. This is another group of people. And I would propose to you that this is the massive majority of humans that have ever lived are made up right here. And this is being done for redemption, justice, kindness, assessment. But they're going to be raised again. And notice it didn't say that they don't have to worry about the second death, because this appears to be a physical resurrection. Who's going to be around at that time? Who's going to be around at that time to redeem and evaluate and assess and hold and nurture? Well, the team, the first fruits, the elect, the servants of the Most High God. 1,000 years to prepare the earth for this event, this massive resurrection. But it's not. I've heard people say, well, there's going to be the white throne judgment and they're going to get their sentence. Is that what it says? Or did we have a Father and Son that were interested in redemption and healing and nurturing? Revelation 20, 11 through 15, I've kind of abbreviated it. I saw a great white throne, and the dead, small and great, stand before God. I would assume this is exactly who we're just reading about, the rest of the dead. Because I believe we are being judged now. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have a supernatural calling. You and other thousands and thousands of others are here celebrating, or around the earth, celebrating these holy times because there has been a calling. And we're being assessed now. Obviously, those that were raised in the first resurrection were already assessed or judged, and the blood of the Lamb covered them. But the small and the great stand before God, in the book of life, and other books were opened, and they were judged. Again, that doesn't mean thumbs down. That means assessed. If you have some ailments and you go into your doctor, you hope he will judge you. You hope he will assess you accurately and say, I think you've got an iron deficiency or whatever. But the intention is to help, not to condemn. Who would want you to think that the Father and Son are ready to pull the trigger on you? Is that hard to figure out? Not at all. The same liar that poisoned a third of the angelic beings that witnessed creation. That's how good he is at deception. So these books were opened. And I would propose to you that there has been some time that these humans have lived. And you've nurtured, and you've helped, and you've cleansed. And it would only make sense that redeemers would have access to that recording of the entire life so you can truly be effective. So we can be effective counselors. They were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. Mainstream Christianity doesn't talk much about works. But obviously, this is actions. These are things that they did, mentally processed and then did, lived, said, practiced. And to fully assess how a person came to the point they're at, the wounds, the experiences, the nurturing, loving parents, or exactly the opposite. Whoever was not found in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Not candy coating things. People have described this as an atomic fire. Very, very, very rapid. Nanoseconds. And of course, fire or combustion is not destruction. You're really not destroying anything, you're converting to another form, for what that's worth. But they're saying here, this is the second death. There is such a thing. There's massive distortion on when this happens and to who it happens to, but it's clearly there. We're not whitewashing that there are consequences. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the Lord your God. And it's also a phenomenal thing. If you yield, and you are, and there's thousands of others that are yielding, that can help and will help in these situations. Revelation 21:1, I saw a new heaven, John's writing, and a new earth. First heaven and earth have disappeared now. So people point out that this temporary dwelling that we're connecting with, that Old English word tabernacle, indicating a temporary dwelling, is also what we're standing on right now and what we're looking at and what we're living in. They're all temporary levels, but they're disappeared and there was no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. These things are being specifically given to John to write down for us. In our childlike ability to process this information, it's just like, Wow! But what does this mean? We don't know. But it's got to be good because you know the Father and the Son are doing it. What does this mean? And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, isn't it interesting that when very important things happen, they're belted out. It's loud. They're blasting it. They're blowing trumpets. They're yelling. A great voice out of heaven saying, behold. That's an old English word, isn't it? Behold. Yeah, what does that mean? In the Old Testament, we've got a word Shema. A lot of us know what that is. Shema Israel. It's a word that means, come here. Come here. Eyeball to eyeball, I want you right here. Listen very carefully and make sure you do what I'm telling you. And if you do, it'll work out really well. Make sure you get this. Make sure you internalize this. Make sure you write this on the tables of your heart. Make sure you really internalize. Same thing's going on here. Take a look. Hey, this is a significant event. Look at this and realize what's happening here. It says the tabernacle of God. Greek word is skene. Curiously means made of green boughs. Huh. Just like the tabernacle, just like the sukkah. The tabernacle of God, pretty clear who we're talking about, is with men. Again, this happened once. We know he came as a human being once, but he's coming again. Is with men, and he will dwell with them. Not for 30 plus years, but that's sideways 8 again. And beyond. And they, for a change, will become his people because they've been redeemed. They've been judged and assessed and helped and nurtured and cleansed and have become the people of the Messiah. It's not happened yet. Only in microcosm, only in the faithful elect, like you. This is a description of you now. It will be for mankind. It's not happening yet. But it is for you now and thousands of others. Whew, look at what it says here. And the Most High, God himself, the Most High, the one we call the Father, El Elyon, shall be with them and be their God. What's the name of this study we're doing? God with us? Oh, yes. In the full extent of the word, God with us. This just took a massive level and massive step up on this. We're not just talking about the Messiah coming in the flesh. We're talking about the supernatural returning, conquering Son returning, that God, and then the Most High, and being with us. When you read the description of this holy time, he says, I want you to celebrate before me with the branch, symbolic of salvation, and that fruit of that tree of life, and do this in the presence, in my presence, in my panim. Figure of speech today won't be coming to reality when we will be in the presence and we'll be able to not be consumed with the power and the radiation given off, because we too will be spirit and composed of the same. Revelation 21:4. Mothers and fathers, think about When you've wiped away the tears from your children, where were they? In your lap, in your arms. This is a very intimate statement here. It didn't say that the Most High is going to prevent all reasons for tears, because there still will be. But he says, I'm going to wipe them away from your eyes. The Father will do this while you're in his presence, on his lap, in his embrace. Wow. That's the kind of the loving, compassionate being that we serve. Comforting. He knows our frame. I love this list. There will be no more death. Have you considered the weight of that statement? No more death means no more physical. No more physical life. I.e., at that time, there will be no mortal human beings. And there may be no more mortal animals. Thought of that? The cherubim have got 4 faces, don't they? What are the 4 faces on the cherubim? Eagle, lion, right? Ox and a man. So does the cherubim have the face of the ox, or does the ox have the face of the cherubim? Who was around first? Eagle, same question. You see what I'm saying? It sounds like these things preceded the human creation. We don't know, but it's interesting. No more termination of life. No more termination. Sorrow. What things do we sorrow over? Losses, grievous disappointments, abuse, crying, same thing, pain, same thing. Gone. Aren't most of these associated with the influence of Satan? Gone. These former things are Gone. Gone. This isn't hyperbole. This is a fact. This is coming. And seated on his throne, the Most High said, behold, pay attention, come here. There's a beckoning in that word, come here. Listen very, very closely. Make sure you really absorb this, because this is a heavy, as we say. This cannot be more significant. Tune in on this, listen to this. Dwell on this, ruminate on this. I will make all things new. All things new. This day is the 8th day, isn't it? We know that the week is in a 7-day cycle. It's really an intriguing study to just take a look at 8 in the scriptures. It's talking about this. New beginnings, new start. But there's not going to be new forms of death or sorrow. Gone. New types of life, new types of creation, new types of fulfillment that, again, are just way over our scope. What in the world does this mean? He says, the heavens declare my glory. This is going way beyond this earth, New Jerusalem. It's going also to the new heavens. There's a reason for that being created, or in this case, is created new. All things new. The prototype years will be over. The learning things the hard way will be over. It's just hard to imagine. We can imagine as human beings. This is beyond a fresh start. This is beyond our ability to grasp. These things are too wonderful for us. Like Paul said, we're currently seeing through a poorly polished mirror. He was trained by the Messiah personally, knew the language, knew the culture. He said, hey, not getting a very clear idea what's coming, but it's going to be beyond our grasp. So with this in mind, regardless of the amount of grief and setbacks that you run into, plan on it in these next months. Remember what's coming here. This promise, and it is a promise, is to you and the other called out ones. We're given this precious information. This isn't hype. This is fact here. This is going to happen. He speaks of those things that are not as if they are. It's coming. It's going to be there. And there's a very specific reason why you know about it, because you're going to be involved. Because once he started a good work in you, not stopping. Satan would like you to think, boy, you've screwed up too many times. No, it doesn't say that. Never leave, never forsake. I'm going to take you to this point. The one that's got all of these titles, Prince of Peace, Counselor, the Mighty God, he's the one. He's not letting go. He and the Father are same page. Do you remember the discussion that Christ had with his Father the last night of his life? This was probably minutes after the guys got done arguing who would be the biggest and greatest amongst them. Really being jerks about the whole thing. And he said, Father, these guys that you've given me, nobody's taken them out of our hands. Not happening. They're 30-some-year-old. They would live another 50 or 60 years. Not happening. Do you really think it's different for you? Not happening. We're going to be a part of this. Behold, this is worth fully wrapping your mind around. Not hyperbole. Fact. We've pretty much wrapped up our time. This has been a joy meeting with you, servants of the Most High God. God bless you. Be strong and faithful. There is a song to follow that has this very lyrics in it. It's a very powerful song. The man that wrote it and sang it doesn't understand the scope fully, but you do. So read that into it as that song's playing, and I will quickly disconnect and reconnect. All Things New is the name of the song.
I've heard you can take what's broken and make it whole again. Well, here's the pieces of my heart. What can you do? 'cause I can't hold them all together anymore. So I let them fall, surrendered to the floor. You make all things new. You make all things new. Oh, God of mercy and love, do what only you can do, and make all things new. Only you can bring such beauty from the depths of all my pain. Only you can take this shattered heart and make it beat again. Oh, you hold the soul together in your hands. I surrender all I have and all I am. You make all things new. You make all things new. Oh, God of mercy and love, do what only you can do, and make all things new. From the ashes, from the dust, I will rise up, rise up, out of darkness into